Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. So, hi Jellybean. This is the real star of the show, Jellybean. Welcome back to Jellybean's channel, where I'm just your guest host, Alita. We had a very successful reading month in January, so this is the wrap up. And we are going to do it how I said we were going to, where we kind of compete with the books, I guess. So we're going to start with books I DNF'd, 1-star books, 2-star books, 3 stars, 4 stars, and finally 5 stars. But it was very difficult to pick my favorite of the favorites because I had 9 5-star books this month out of 20 books that I read. So this can be a long video, so go get your coffee or your tea or whatever, and let's talk about these books. We're gonna start with the DNFs. I have technically only 3 DNFs, but there are 5 books here. So, I'm just going to quickly go through them. The first DNF is actually the first in a series, and that is why I have these other 2, because I'm just going to unhaul them. Why keep them on my shelves if I'm not going to read them? So, I DNF'd Watched by Sydney M. Hogan. It was just very boring. It's supposed to be about this class trip to Washington, D.C., where Christy witnesses a murder, and then she gets flung into spy school. I felt very lackluster, and just, I was bored. DNF'd The Second Wife by Rebecca Fleet. About 100 pages in. Yeah, about 100 pages in. So I have DNF'd 2 books by Rebecca Fleet. I just don't like her writing style, so I'm not gonna buy her books anymore. The premise of this sounded really good because it's a thriller about this house fire, and I don't even remember the guy's name, Alex. When Alex comes home from work, his house is on fire, and his wife, his second wife, says that she doesn't know what happened, but his daughter, Jade, got hurt, and when she wakes up in the hospital, she says something about a man being in the house at the time the fire started, and it's supposed to be this compelling mystery thriller that makes you want to know more, but honestly, at the end, I just did not care, because he kept thinking to himself what he was gonna do, and then he did it. The last one that I DNF'd was most recent. It was We Set the Dark on Fire by Taylor K. Misha. I'm just not into political intrigue type books, and honestly, the outdated stance on women in this book I just did not care for, and I know that if I would have finished the book, it probably would have been like, oh my god, women are so much better than just caring for children or caring for their husbands. They're people too, and all that good stuff, but I just did not care. That I DNF, I automatically unhaul. I actually have a trade appointment tomorrow to celebrate my re-birthday. My husband's gonna take me book shopping, and so I get to trade books too. So these are the first of my own haul. Okay, and then anything under 3 stars I automatically unhaul. And then from there we kind of just figure it out. But for my 1-star books, I did not like any of these books, so it was very hard to determine worse, and better, if that makes sense. But my, like, the very, very worst book that I read this month was The Troop by Nick Cutter. And, I went into this expecting, like, a survival story, intense horror, and I got gore and disgusting body horror over more body horror, and it was just way too extreme for me. I didn't appreciate it. I'm not going to read this again, so I'm going to unhaul that one too. So the next one I was super excited for, and it was actually on my TBR. It was Cross Your Heart by Sarah Pinborough. I read 13 Minutes by this author. Loved every second of it. It was a YA mystery. This is an adult thriller. I did not find it very thrilling. I found it very boring, and it was just a mother-daughter having 2 separate lives that they just talked about their lives. There was no thrilling aspect in this book. Fight me. But seriously, I hated this book with a passion. Okay, and then the last 1-star book of the month was actually my book club pick of the month. So, thank you, Amanda, for making me read this. But she picked Suicide Notes by Thomas Scott Ford. Is that his name? By Michael Thomas Ford. I was close. I gave it 1 star because, okay, actually I'm going to be honest with you. Initially I gave it 2 stars because I thought it had potential. But the more I thought about it, the more I hated this book. Because it dealt with some very hard topics about suicide and being in a mental, like a bad place mentally. And it dealt with it in such a terrible way. And there were just plot twists that were used as devices to keep the story going, but literally nothing happened. And like, when something huge happens in a story and you totally just write it off and it's like there's no reaction, I hate that. If you read a hard-hitting contemporary, I want to get all the feels. And you know what? I hated the main character. I did not feel anything for him. But when these side characters had these moments of mental breakdowns and the world keeps going, they don't even mention it ever again, it angers my soul. Before I go on a rampage, let's get into my 2-star books. I don't think I had any, actually. I'm gonna skip right to the 3-star books. So I have 2 3-star books, which I'm going to be unhauling both of them because, yes, they're 3 stars, but let's just talk about it. So, the 3-star books that are battling are False Memory by Dean Koontz and All the Water in the World by Karen Rainey. Let's start with Dean Koontz because he is the winner of the worst book of my 3-star reads. Honestly, this wasn't a terrible book. It really wasn't. It was an okay read. There are trigger warnings for rape and abuse and things of that nature that usually don't bother me in books. I tend to read that kind of stuff and it doesn't, it does not sit well with me ever, but this one bothered me on a different level. Felt very disconnected to the characters, and I think that's why I didn't love it. So I gave it 3 stars. All the Water in the World, I was really excited for because you follow Eve and Maddie. Maddie is a 16-year-old girl who has leukemia, which is the same kind of cancer that I survived as a child. And I was really excited to read this. I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna break my heart in the best way possible. And then I'm gonna send it to my mom and it can be like something we connect through. But this book does not hold up. I was being told how Maddie was sick. I didn't feel for her at all. And I just did not care about her. Which makes me feel like heartless. But I just felt very disconnected from the story. And I really wanted to be connected. I wanted to love this story. Maybe that's part of the problem, that I had high expectations for this book. And it just did not... It just did nothing for me. So, 3 stars. I enjoyed it from an outsider's perspective, but I wanted more. And then our 4-star books, I read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, and I had the book, like the ebook, and I also listened on audio. I enjoyed it. It was very weird though, and had some elements that I was not expecting. It took a turn that wasn't my favorite, but I was very entertained the entire book, so 4 stars. Then I read My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, and I went into that book with super high expectations. I thought, ooh, it's going to be a new favorite horror book. It was good, okay? It gave me a lot of 80s pop culture, which I wasn't around in the 80s, so it was kind of cool to visit that time in a book. And it was scary. There were a lot of like cheesy, scary moments, which I absolutely adore. So I enjoyed this book. It was 4 stars. My other 4-star book that I don't own because it's on Audible is Call Me Maybe by Tara Bastone. It was just a really cute, unexpected romance. It's basically this woman calls this tech help line, like, help me fix my laptop call number. You know those call numbers. She's on hold for a long time and she's kind of irritated when she finally gets through, and then she starts talking to the guy on the phone, and maybe something blossoms there. Then my last 3 4-star books. I'm only going to keep one of these, actually. So, the one I'm keeping is obviously my favorite. We'll start with my least favorite 4-star, but still 4 stars, so I still enjoyed it, which was Soul Survivor by Dean Koontz. This is about this guy who is a detective, and someone tells him that the plane that crashed 2 years ago and killed his wife and his child, someone tells him that there are survivors and that his wife and child are still alive. And that sends him on this epic quest to figure out what's going on. I enjoyed it a lot. Until the end. The end ruined it for me because it took on a different kind of twist that I wasn't expecting, nor did I like. It's as simple as that. And then I think I initially gave this 5 stars, but after sitting on it for a couple days, I have decided that it's not quite worthy of 5 stars for me. It's more of a 4-star read, and that is The List by Siobhan Vivian. There's nothing wrong with this book. It's perfectly good. It's heartbreaking. It's about this list that comes out every single year about the prettiest girl in every grade level and the ugliest girl in every grade level and the girls in between. And Abby, you kind of follow all of their perspectives, all 8 of them. But Abby is the prettiest, and you kind of see her life versus the ugliest girl, and it is very hard-hitting and very sad. I hate that this is the reality that we live in more times than not, objectifying women like this. And I felt for these characters, and I would highly recommend this book. I just don't see myself rereading it, so I'm gonna unhaul it. The best of the 4 stars, which was almost a 5-star, was Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. I got this at the dollar store, which is great. But for everyone that doesn't know, Lauren Graham is an actress who played on Gilmore Girls and Parenthood, and she's also an author. She talked about writing her first piece of fiction and how that process was, which I enjoyed immensely because I am a writer. I don't get to write as often as I would like, but it gave me a lot of advice about writing. A really nice book to read. She also gave some Hollywood tips about how to make it in Hollywood, which were hilarious because she's one funny lady. So I'm not a big nonfiction reader, but I read this and I liked it. This is the hard part. I have 8 books here and 1 online, or 1 on audio. They're all 9 5-stars, and before I started filming, I actually put them in order of, like, worst to best. So, you guys ready for my 9 best books of 2021 so far? Okay. I think it's actually this one. So, 5 stars, 9th place is In 5 Years by Rebecca Surley. I found this at the thrift store. I got really lucky. So this is a 2020 release, which is so cool. But you follow this woman named Danny who goes on a job interview and goes on a date with her boyfriend. And then after the date, they go home and she falls asleep because she might have had one too many to drink. And she wakes up in 5 years and she gets a glimpse of what her life is like, but she lives in a different apartment. Her boyfriend isn't there, and things are different in a lot of ways. So she stays in 5 years for 1 hour, and then she comes back to the present, and you spend the rest of the book trying to figure out this mystery of what that brief encounter in the future meant. And it was wonderful because I'm going to be completely honest with you. There was a part where it got kind of slow, kind of boring, and I'm just like, I'm not going to like this book. But I stuck through, and I kept reading, and the ending broke my heart. And 5 stars because of the ending alone. My second place for 5-star reads is Crazy by Amy Reed. This I didn't expect, but it's told through letters or emails from Izzy and to Connor, and from Connor to Izzy. And they meet at the summer camp, and Isabel is like this amazing, always happy girl. And then they go their separate ways, and they live not that far away from each other. He lives on the island like outside of Seattle, and she lives in Seattle proper. And they are always emailing, but then you kind of realize that Isabel has super high highs and really low lows. And it has great bipolar rep in this. And I just really enjoyed the dynamic of Connor and Isabel, and yet again, this is another book that just trashed my heart. These are all 5 stars, so read them all. But number 3 is Love, Life, and the List by Casey West. Well, I guess technically it's actually 9, 8, 7. This is number 7, is Love, Life, and the List by Casey West. So this was a really cute read. I have liked 3 Casey West books and not like 2 of them. So it was kind of a let's see if I like her or not type thing. And I love this. So maybe I do love Casey West. But you follow Abby. Yep, you follow Abby, who has proclaimed her love to her best friend Cooper. And he kind of ignored it for a year. And then she is also an artist, so she is trying to get into this art show to prove that she is worthy. And it's kind of the drama of the art show and how she wants to change her art. So she makes a list of 10 things she has to do in 1 month. And then number 6 was One Was Lost by Natalie D. Richards. So this follows a class who goes on a camping trip, and then they kind of get flooded in and stranded. At least part of the class, not all of it. And this is their survival story and the mystery of 20 years prior, this girl had committed suicide in the forest, or at least that's what they said, in the same forest that they're stuck in. And it's a crazy mystery. You will not guess what's going on with it. The next best one is The Cousins by Karen N. McManus. What can I say about this without giving it away? So, you follow Jonah, Millie, and Aubrey. In present day, they are all three cousins who are just meeting for the first time because their grandmother has invited them to this island that she basically owns, and they're teenagers, so they want to meet their extended family. So they do it, and then you follow another timeline of Allison, who is Aubrey's mom. Aubrey's mom? Millie's mom. I think it's Mildred's mom. I don't know. It's one of their moms. And you figure out why Grandma disowned them and why they grew up without their extended family. And you kind of learn how it relates to now and why Grandma brought them to the island. This book has so many twists and turns that I could not count them, but it kept me anticipating what was to come and kept me guessing. 4 is The Night Olivia Fell by Christina McDonald. So, this is an intriguing mystery about Olivia, who has fallen, and now she's in this coma, and Abby, her mom, gets this phone call in the middle of the night that she needs to go to the hospital and figure it out. And this is kind of Olivia's story of how she got to this coma. And it's also Abby finding out about her daughter's life. Number 3 is I Killed Zoe Sopranos by Kit Frick. So my friends were telling me to read this, but going into it, I was like, it's a podcast book. I'm not gonna like it. Yep. Turns out there's a very compelling podcast element in this book, but it's a mystery about Zoe Sopranos and her connection to Anna and what happens when they collide, kind of. But you get 2 different timelines. You get the present when Anna is confessing to murder, and then you get the past as what's going on. And then there's a podcast element with this girl on this island. I think it's another island mystery. But she talks about unsolved cold cases on her podcast, and oh my god, it's just so good. And then Blue Sprayed Edges. But yeah. Okay, and then I've been going back and forth between the two that are left on my list. But in my heart of hearts, I know that number 2 is 10 by Gretchen McNeil. In this book, you follow 10 teenagers who go to this island, this mansion party on an island. And it's this thriller about how these kids start dying one by one. And it's kind of like this mystery that you have to solve to figure out who's behind it. You'll guess every single person until you finally figure it out. And it was just so good. There are a lot of horror elements in this book, but it all worked perfectly. The ending is like jaw-droppingly, what? Number 1 on my favorites of 2021 thus far, because we're only 1 month in, is a book that I said I would never read. A book that I falsely judged because it's a fantasy. Yeah. My favorite book in January of 2021. So my favorite book so far is a fantasy. I didn't see that one coming either, you guys. My favorite book of the year thus far is, drum roll, is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I really need to own this book right now. So, everyone knows what Addie LaRue is, you know, like, but if you don't, if you were like me and you haven't read it yet, I urge you to read it. So you follow Addie LaRue, who makes a deal. Okay, so you follow Addie LaRue, who makes a deal to live forever. But what she doesn't know is that she will be forgotten every time she leaves the room by anyone she ever meets. Until 300 years later, someone remembers her. And it's this epic journey. It's this epic love story, this epic journey of what it's like to be human and what it's like to be immortal. And some of the quotes in this book just set my soul on fire. So going into this book, I had lower than low expectations. I thought I would hate this book. So I sincerely apologize. But I loved it. And like, I read it a couple days ago, or I finished it a couple days ago. But I'm still broken from it. And it's so hard to move past it, but it broke me in all the right ways. So, I'm gonna be clear here. The first I want to say 100 pages. I don't know because I listened to it on audio, but the first few hours of audio, I liked them enough to keep going, but I did not love the dual timelines. I understand why it's in there, and from an audience perspective, I get it, but I thought that the 300 years leading up to the event were very repetitive and very lackluster. So I almost was like, yeah, it's probably going to be like a 3-star book for me. I was wrong, okay? This book broke my soul. It ripped out every piece of my heart that I had from my other books that had already broken me. And it just stomped my heart into the ground and kicked me while I was down. And I loved it. It was like the best ending to a book I've ever read. But I will never be the same after reading that book. So that's why I need it on my shelf. I need to buy Addie LaRue. Thank you for watching. If you like this way of doing monthly wrap-ups, let me know in the comments below because I loved it. I got to talk about every single book and like it got to break me all over again, which is just perfect, right? So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel.